This episode of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please sign up to give us $1 or $2 per episode over at patreon.com/geeks. And if you'd rather make a one-time contribution, you can do that via check or PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. And I want to give a special thank you to Bill Rand, who just signed up this week to support us on Patreon. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. All right, so now let's get to our show.
Wired.com presents The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. And here is your host, David Barr Kirtley.
Hello, and welcome to episode 457 of Geek's Guide to the Galaxy. Today on the show, we'll be discussing Season 1 of the Amazon original series Upload, created by Greg Daniels. And this will include spoilers for every episode of the show, so just be aware of that. And I'm joined by 3 guests. So first up, we've got our producer, John Joseph Adams. He's the editor of Lightspeed Magazine and the series editor of the Best American Science Fiction and Fantasy, and he's also edited more than 30 other anthologies. His latest project is the 3-volume dystopia triptych, Ignorance is Strength, Burn the Ashes, and Or Else the Light. So John, welcome back.
Always good to be here.
Then next up, we've got Tobias S. Bakel, making his 14th appearance on the show. He's the author of the Xenowolf series of space adventure novels, the eco-thrillers Arctic Rising and Hurricane Fever, and the Halo novels The Cold Protocol and Envoy. His new novel, The Stranger in the Citadel, will be out in May from Audible.com. So Toby, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
And also joining us today is Abby Goldsmith, who you may remember from our panel on Isaac Asimov's Foundation back in episode 434. She's a co-host of the Stories for Nerds podcast, and her short fiction has appeared in Escape Pod and Fantasy Magazine. Her Torth series of space opera novels are available now on Wattpad, where they've racked up over 50,000 reads. So Abby, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Okay, so let's start off with John, and have you tell us what were your expectations going into Upload?
Well, I didn't really have any expectations when I originally first started watching it, because I just sort of turned on my Amazon Fire Stick thing that I have plugged in my TV, and it's like it was just in the little little box on my screen there, and I'm like, oh, what's that? And we just sort of watched the first episode without knowing anything about it, and then once the credits started rolling, I saw Greg Daniels and I recognized his name. So, but like I don't think I was familiar with any of the main cast or anything, so it wasn't like something I'd been hyped for. So I kind of went into it almost completely, basically just not knowing anything about it. So my expectations were 0 because I just blundered into it.
So when you saw the credits and saw that Greg Daniels was involved, what was your reaction to that?
Oh, no, very good. I mean, I've seen every episode of The Office, Parks and Rec. I don't know if I've seen every episode of his other shows, but I definitely watched King of the Hill back in the day, and so I'm definitely a Greg Daniels fan.
Yeah, well, he started off apparently writing for Saturday Night Live and The Simpsons. So presumably you haven't seen every episode of those.
No, that would be very difficult. I mean, there definitely are people who have seen every episode of The Simpsons, but Saturday Night Live, probably those people are few and far between.
Yeah. He also did Space Force. Did you ever watch that?
Oh, no, I didn't realize he did that. Yeah. No, I like that.
Yeah, all right, cool. How about Toby? Expectations going into Upload?
0 expectations. I didn't realize that Greg Daniels was the showrunner or writer or creator. I just saw like a brief kind of internet ad for it. It looked at the time maybe possibly silly or not that great. I just didn't know what to take of it. And the premise seemed like it could have been kind of a disaster. And I put it on in the back while I was doing like some balancing the bills or something like that. And about 10 minutes in, I kind of put down my laptop and went, okay, I'm going to pay attention to this because I think it's more interesting than I expected. I think part of the reason I was kind of a little bit unsure what to make of it was that Robbie Amell, I've only ever seen kind of like as a bit character in random CW episodes of things. And I was like, is he, will he be able to carry a whole show on his own? I have no idea. So I just didn't know what to make of it until I sat down and kind of caught a whole episode and went like, I think this is kind of going to be really interesting, really smart.
Yeah, I wasn't, I'm just getting around to watching this now, even though it came out a while ago. And so, yeah, I just saw a trailer or something. I was like, it looks okay. Like it's a science fiction show. I added it to my list of science fiction shows. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll watch it if I have time. And finally I had time. But yeah, I'm not, I actually, I didn't know the name Greg Daniels. I have watched like some of those shows that I was just mentioning to John, but I'm not like hugely into any of them. And the only way I recognized Robbie Amell is he was the star of this movie called Code 8, where it was this, I think it was sort of like a crowdfunded low budget movie. It was kind of it was like a low budget X-Men kind of. And I remember thinking it was like pretty good for what it was. But it didn't really stick in my mind that much. And I thought, I remember him being fine, but nothing about his performance really stuck out to me. So actually, I thought he was like much more interesting in this ultimately than in that. But yeah, I mean, basically, I just it's a science fiction show, and you guys all mentioned somehow having some interest in discussing it, so I thought I would check it out. But yeah, I had pretty low expectations going into it. And so, how about Abby? What were your expectations going into Upload?
Yeah, a friend recommended it, and I thought the premise sounded like a normal everyday science fiction trope, so I was a little hesitant and I didn't watch it right away. But like you guys said, I mean, once I watched the first episode, I was like, this is actually really good. Really funny writing. I mean, I thought they did so much with it. And now that you mentioned that the creator came from a Simpsons background, that makes some sense.
Yeah, and so like Greg Daniels, yeah, like I said, he got to start on The Simpsons, and he actually, I think, is pretty good friends with Conan O'Brien. And so they kind of like got a lot of their early jobs together, including The Simpsons. And so I was just watching a panel where Conan was interviewing the cast and Greg Daniels. And he said, I've known Greg since he was 20. And even back then he was talking about like, he was just like obsessed with this idea of using technology to live forever. And it was all he would ever talk about. So this is something that he's been, sort of thinking about for a long time. And I think like he actually had this sort of like written as some sort of treatment or pilot or something for decades. And so like you say, Abby, it's not like a super groundbreaking concept or something, right? This idea of uploading your mind and living on inside a virtual reality situation is a pretty familiar idea in science fiction. I guess that was another reason why I didn't immediately jump into watching the show. But I mean, it's a cool idea. And I think actually the show ends up doing some kind of interesting things with that. But so actually, I think, John, you told me, right, that you would watch the first episode and you're like, oh, this is good, but then you didn't watch anymore. Is that right?
Well, no, I mean, we watched the first episode and both Christy and I really liked it. Like, I mean, I know I really, really liked it, and I was eager to watch more, and I felt like that was her impression as well. But then it's like, I don't know what was going on at the time when we watched it, but like, we just never got back to watching it, and it sort of got pushed off of our home screen, so that it wasn't among the most recent things we'd watched. I think maybe we were just watching a bunch of different things at the time. So yeah, I just feel like it was completely unfair to the show that we watched the one and then didn't just immediately watch all of them, because once we decided we were going to do this panel, we both rewatched the first episode, and then we watched half of the first season on that first night, and then we watched the second half on the next night. So it was like we watched the whole first season in just 2 days. So obviously we didn't have any negative impressions of it.
Yeah, well, no, this is a super bingeable show. I mean, it really like carries you through, and it's fun. I actually had kind of mixed feelings about the first episode. I mean, I enjoyed it, but I kind of felt like let me just set up the premise, as I said, yes, is our main character is this guy, Nathan, and he's 27 and he's extraordinarily good looking. He's like a better looking version of Tom Cruise, and is like a young software developer. And this is in the year 2033. And after you die, I guess before you die, they can upload your mind, and then you can live on in these sort of virtual reality nursing home kind of environments. And he's been creating but which are sort of, expensive. And so he and a friend have been creating kind of like a free server where people could live on without having to pay all these fees and everything. And he has a girlfriend named Ingrid, who's very, she's from a wealthy family and is sort of very entitled and controlling, and just off-putting. And he is on his way home from the store or something, and his self-driving car has a malfunction and crashes, injuring him very seriously. And he is persuaded by his girlfriend to have his mind uploaded into a VR environment. And so that's kind of most of what happens in the first episode. And so I guess like the thing that I had sort of, actually I'll say what I really liked initially was a lot of the background details of this world, of this future of 2033. So like there's this bicycle, kind of like self-driving bicycle that's like a Lyft, LYFT bicycle, where you summon it on your phone, and then the bicycle rides up and you get on it and you ride it to your destination, and then it rides off. So stuff like that I thought was really good. So I guess let's just start off with that. Is there anything else about this future environment that really jumped out at people, either good or bad? So Toby, what do you think about that?
They did some basic kind of futurism, but what I was really, when I really started getting into the show was, the preview I saw kind of made it very jokey. It's about like, how virtual reality doesn't, like, the way corporations monetize everything. So it's like, since we had, if you've ever grinded it out on an MMORPG, how much they try to monetize just the smallest things. And, it seems like all the software I download now is like on a subscription. You can't just buy something and have it. And they take a lot of that and use the idea of like the virtual reality afterlife to poke fun at those. And I thought it was mainly going to be a sitcom, but what was really interesting was how fast the writers, to their credit, begin to take a lot of this and examine the impact of technology on our lives, today. Like the best of science fiction, it's really about, the stuff that we're dealing with today. So very, very quickly, the idea of just, those microtransactions begin to sort of like make basically what looks like a heavenly afterlife start to become annoying. And it starts to immediately, even in the second episode, begin to lock them into certain problem paths, which I thought was just really interesting. The way they just kept spitting out all of the different problems, even though the core idea sounds like, we've all heard about people getting uploaded, and we all know how like people can use the upload world to kind of live their fantasies. But it was really quickly, interestingly, how the virtual world becomes a world with consequences and problems and issues that the character has to kind of navigate right off the bat.
Yeah, I think if this show has kind of a high concept, it's that, is that, in the contemporary world, that these tech companies kind of control, like they always know what we're doing and they're controlling every aspect of our lives. And then in this future, that's even true of the afterlife. And I think that's a really good premise. And it took me a little while to actually catch on that that's what they were doing. Because initially I was kind of like, this afterlife doesn't make total sense to me. Like, I don't understand why it's this bad. Like there should be, like I thought initially he would be like, oh, I can like eat whatever I want and not gain weight and stuff like that. I thought there should have been more of a period of it seeming cool before these problems became more and more apparent. But then like once I sort of started seeing, oh, this is the theme of the show, that made a little bit more sense. But how about Abby? What did you think about this when he first kind of shows up in the virtual reality?
Yeah, I agree about the microtransactions everywhere. The whole like having to rate people, they have to rate their angels. I liked a lot of it. I mean, I also liked the way they portrayed kind of cell phone calls or calling people. You could call back and forth between the real world and this virtual world. They had a window. And the way you call is just by opening your hand, basically, instead of having to deal with a device. So that was kind of a nice touch. But yeah, there's a lot of dystopian symbology going on, which was entertaining because it was so on the nose of what we do deal with in the real world.
Mm-hmm. How about John? What did you think of when he first shows up at Lakeview?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with what Toby and Abby were saying. Although I have to say with the phone thing, while that's cool, I feel like that's a really like holding your thumb and your index finger in that L position to display the virtual screen. Like I feel like that would make your hand cramp up. Like I'm trying to do it right now, and I mean, admittedly, I'm not used to it, but it just doesn't really seem super comfortable to me. But anyway. But yeah, I mean, I love like the different corporate conglomerations that have happened, and like those kind of details, and just all the other stuff everybody else was saying. But as much as I like all of a lot of these technological details that we're talking about, that's probably one places where I had a bunch of issues with the show is with some of the various ways technology is implemented, or even just like science. Like, I mean, so Nathan basically has a punctured lung. It's like, wait a minute, that's pretty treatable even now, not let alone in 2033 or whatever. Like, presumably in 12 years, it'll be even easier to treat that. And I get that, you don't want to risk dying on the table, because then you miss out on your chance of getting uploaded. But it's like, that didn't really seem like a big risk there, because it's like, well, he's already in the hospital. If it seems like he's going to die, just go upload him. But then also, like, I was very confused by the, you sit him down in a chair and then like you vaporize his head, and then the body kind of collapses into a little vat that they're going to put on ice. I'm like, none of that made any sense to me. Like, wait, why is that happening? And yeah.
Oh, well, actually, that kind of made sense to me, because I don't know if you remember, John, like years ago, we went to see a reading by Robin Wasserman.
Yeah.
And she had written a novel, like I think a YA novel about a character whose like brain is uploaded into a robot body or something. And she was saying she had talked to some scientist who had said that in order to scan your brain at a level of fidelity, for this kind of computer modeling of it, you would probably have to destroy that process would probably destroy your physical brain.
Oh,
and
okay.
So in her story, they sort of like froze your brain in liquid nitrogen and then like took very thin slices of it and then scanned each of those. But so there was no brain left
right
afterwards.
Well,
so
see,
that's what I was.
Yeah, I mean, if they had presented it that way, that would make sense. It's like the way they do it on the show, it's just kind of done like as a joke. But then and so it's like, it is kind of funny, but then it doesn't really like make sense, like if you don't like sort of explain it the way you just did, because it's like the way we're looking at it visually, it doesn't seem like that's what's happening. So it is just kind of that kind of like was one of those suspension of disbelief things, like okay.
Well, the thing I had with that was that they let your family members watch this happen.
That was ridiculous. Yeah.
So yeah, there were things like that like I thought there was a tension in the show between the science fiction and the humor.
Yeah.
And definitely some of the humor, doesn't make sense in science fictional terms. I mean, the big thing that was really bugging me in the first episode was that they have this like data stream where you can kill yourself, and they say like something like 50% of people use this to kill themselves.
Yeah.
And I just can't believe that's not more of an issue for their customers.
Right.
Like it doesn't like there's and that they don't build a fence around it, or like why is it even there at all? Like
right.
Stuff like that. Just I was really having trouble with to start off with. But Toby, do you have anything else you want to say about just sort of this basic setup of this virtual reality situation?
No, but one of the narratively interesting things, you're talking about the phone call, and I really, really loved the episode number 3 was when I really got into the show, which is when they hold the funeral. And they have that big glass sort of viewing panel for both sides, right? So it's kind of like the TV becomes like breaking the fourth wall between the two groups of virtuals and the people in real life for the funeral. And he basically gets to stand in front of this, giant TV monitor and look, through into the room where his funeral is being held, because that's a giant wall is basically turned into a screen for him. And everyone in real life is kind of almost moving on and having their own kind of moment. And he's not really part of it, right? And I thought that was really fascinating. There's just some stuff going on in there about how we move on from people and how that might scare us and how that might be a fear that you have after you leave, how your memories linger on or don't. And he is watching some of those things happen like in real time, because he has that access to the other side of real life. And so like a sort of a stranded ghost, he's just on the other side being ignored by most of the people at his funeral, looking at, just sort of the aftermath of his life. And that, I thought, was when it started to move from just sort of like a situational comedy, right? The situation being like, here's how goofy it would be if, large corporations actually ran our afterlife, to being sort of very poignant.
Yeah, no, I love that scene. I agree with you. It was, again, from a science fiction perspective, it was kind of making me wonder why they don't have telepresence robots, which they actually have now, right? So like when I interviewed Richard Garriott, he actually owns this little, it's like a scooter with a TV monitor for where the head would be. And then he can like, go around the office and talk to people and everything and, continue participating in his life. So it seems like there would be stuff like that, although they actually had a really good line about how the uploaded people aren't allowed to hold jobs because they don't, the government doesn't want them competing for jobs with the living people.
Right.
So there may be stuff like that going. And I thought that was a good sort of science fiction kind of extrapolation of something that might happen.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, that just reminds me. Yeah, episode 3 is with the funeral, and then and that's a really great technological thing. But then also, like, I'm just looking at the list of episodes, and like episode 4 is the sex suit, and then episode 5 is the gray market, and those are both two other really good examples of what they do on this show that I think is just like really interesting. Like the sex suit, like, I mean, it's just completely ridiculous. But I mean, it's like, like if you have a loved one, a spouse that was, or whatever, or lover that was that's now in the afterlife, and you still want to be able to have relations with them, then there you go. And there's like they actually could have made so many more jokes about that. Like I feel like I kind of admire the restraint that they only did as many as they did. But it was just like a really cool detail, because it's like, oh, like you could totally overlook that. But then but I thought that was really cool. And then the gray market, where they kind of go on the edges of the virtual reality, kind of like the dark web or something, to find all the different illicit things that the virtual reality isn't supposed to allow. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it was kind of funny how the kid wants to get the tattoo that will let his avatar age up, but then since he bought something that was just like he did, like from some dude in a back alley, basically, it turned out that the upgrade he got was actually for a gender that didn't match his own, and so he was a little confused when the results happened. But I thought they handled that about as well as probably could be expected, although I wouldn't presume to judge that as a straight white dude. But I thought it worked pretty well for what they were doing.
Yeah, well, I really started to like that gray market episode was where I really started liking the show. Before that, I was kind of like, yeah, this is fine.
Yeah.
But the thing I wanted to get to, or like, one of my big sort of hangups early on was that I felt like was that Nathan and Ingrid were kind of like cartoonish, kind of over the top, especially Ingrid. I felt like the show, it's just like so telegraphed that the show wants us to dislike her, that I sort of like push back a little bit of when I feel like a show is just like telling me so clearly how I should feel about the characters. But so I want to ask Abby about that. So Abby, what did you think? What did you think about these characters of Nathan and Ingrid kind of in the first couple episodes?
Yeah, I mean, well, it's true. She was really unlikable and continues to be. But I kind of like larger than life characters. I like cartoons. So I kind of thought the show has a little bit.
Abby went to, what was the Disney art school?
Cal Arts.
Cal Arts. Yeah. So I don't mean to be insulting when I call the characters cartoonish.
Oh yeah, no problem. I mean, it's all a matter of taste. But I tend to like, I thought the humor had a little bit of an overlap with Rick and Morty. Kind of like this exaggerated characters, exaggerated situations, and I've always liked that style. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's interesting because I guess we haven't explained yet. I think Abby mentioned the angel, but so it turns out that they have these sort of like customer service representatives who help the people in the afterlife, deal with whatever like problems come up. And so then there's this character Nora, who is Nathan's angel, and she's a young woman, a very likable young woman, and she lives in kind of like a like a crummy apartment and doesn't really like her job, and has like a difficult like a commutes on the subway and a crowded subway and everything like that. But I thought that this the actress who plays Nora was fantastic.
Yeah,
And I really feel like she brought I feel like she brought a real sense of reality to the character, and by extension to the show overall. I feel like if you didn't have her in this, I think this whole thing might have fallen apart.
Agreed. Yeah, she's definitely carried the show.
yeah. Yeah, and I think she does a lot of heavy lifting that where the show really could have gone off the rails, like with the whole like that sort of very intimate moment right when the person first arrives in the afterlife, and you just have this person sort of talking to you softly in your ear. I feel like that was just like really well done, and like not every actor is going to be able to pull that off in the way that she did. And but then just consistently throughout the whole show she's great. But then also I mean like I think I think we all were sort of agreeing in like the first episode that Nathan Robbie Amell as Nathan was like you kind of weren't kind of sure where that character was going to go, or at least I wasn't really sure if I was going to like him. But then it's like once you get sort of beyond the fact that he has this sort of horrible person as his girlfriend, it's like and the fact that he's like super good looking, it's like you kind of feel like he's probably going to be an asshole in the show, but then he turns out to be not, and he's like actually really smart, and he like so he goes against a lot of the types that you would often see from what you might assume from like the first moments of watching the first episode and everything. So I like that they took him far away from where maybe you were assuming his character was going to go.
I'll put in, I'm going to pull in, I don't, one of the interesting things about Ingrid is that the episode, The Sleepover, I think that's like the 5th or 6th episode or something like that. Ingrid's growth, how she presents herself and what you know about her begins to change your opinion of her as well, right? She's fronting a certain way. She's shown a certain way, entitled and all of that stuff. But starting in episode 6 and moving on, she begins to sort of round out and become a lot more sympathetic. And you, as a watcher, have to kind of grapple with some of the assumptions you may have made about that character, which then plays into the very last episode, what they do. They kind of give her a moment where she kind of lets go of everything to end up making a big change in her life.
Okay, let's not get into the last episode.
I'm not, but just saying that like there's it takes a little bit longer, but there's like definitely like this takeoff with Ingrid's character that actually has kind of made me go like, I'm going to hold off on making any judgments about what they want to do with her.
Yeah, but I agree. Like, toward the end of the season, we sort of see Ingrid's family for the first time, and they're this very wealthy family, and they're just really all just awful to each other all the time. And so we sort of see kind of like that she's actually not as bad as the environment that produced her. And I feel like, that was good. I feel like we could have used maybe more of that, because I feel like it's kind of this love triangle, but in a love triangle, usually you would want, there's like Team Nora and Team Ingrid or something. And I feel like the way the show is presented, like nobody's going to think that Nathan should stay with Ingrid. And I feel like it might be more interesting if, 20% or 30% of viewers would be like, no, actually, I like Ingrid, or, there should, like, if it's foreordained, it's less interesting to me, it seems.
Agreed.
Yeah. Anyone disagree with that?
I will say I disagree.
Okay.
I mean, I think love triangles are a little bit overdone. And I like the tension, because even though it's very clear who she should be with Nora instead of Ingrid, there's so many obstacles to that relationship. And, all the world is set up where he kind of has to stay with Ingrid. And so I think that the tension is derived from that.
Yeah, so he has to stay with Ingrid because she's paying for his bills.
Exactly. She's going to delete him if he says no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That certainly doesn't make her any more likable. That it's like there's that threat of being deleted. It's like on the one hand she is paying for it, but on the other hand, well, is she though? It's really like her family's money, so it's like it's not like it's her hard-earned money that she's spending. And then there is that threat of deletion. So she does have a long road to walk to get to overcome that initial bad impression.
Well, actually, let's get into, there's a part because it kind of brings up these sort of class issues or economic issues in the show. And so there's a part where Nathan finds his way down to the basement, which is called what are they called? 2 gigs?
2 gigs, yeah.
2 gigs.
Which is the VR, which is the uploaded people whose data plan is only for 2 gigs. And so they have to be really careful not to do anything. Or else they use up all their data. This is kind of like my phone plan. So not related to this, but they have to be really careful not to do too much, or else they kind of like get frozen until the end of the month when the data plan rolls over. And there's a really and it's all this. It's very like bare bones, rooms and everything. And so he goes up to this bookcase and is looking at the book, and the book only has the first chapter, and then you have to pay extra for the words to appear in the rest of the book. And there's this little kid reading Harry Potter, and he says, "Oh, Harry Potter, great book, love the wizards." And the kid's like, "There's magic in Harry Potter?"
Yeah.
So sad. So sad.
And then the kid freezes because he's used up his data plan. So I don't know, Toby, what'd you think of the 2 gigs? Anything?
I love the 2 gigs, although I was really kind of expecting them to end up kind of like in a Minecraft-like world, just end up being like blocky and very low res. But the freezing mechanism is just as fun too. I thought that was hilarious. Particularly as Dave says, like it for those of us who've ever been on like a monthly plan. I finally was able to get to a point in my life where I could get the unlimited data on my phones. But I remember when I got my kids' cell phones, the advanced cell phones for the first time, and they started looking at YouTube in the car ride on the way home, and basically suddenly realizing that like by the time I got home, I was going to be out of the month's data. It was definitely gives you some of that same anxiety, and they use it so well in the plot structure for the last chunk of it. It becomes really important to, like it's they use it for that really classic thing where, like in the horror movie, you've got to get rid of everyone's cell phones in order to, really get the fun going, and adventure movies too sometimes. And so here they use it almost like that limiting mechanism. You can only think and do so much. So like you have to plan what you're going to do very carefully when you're down there in 2 gig territory. That was actually even slightly unexpected, even though I saw a lot of the other world building stuff because it draws so heavily from science fiction. But that whole sequence, makes sense socioeconomically for its sort of like critique of the world we live in today, but I thought was genuinely refreshing and caught me off guard and worked really well for upping the tension all throughout it. I was very engaged.
What did you think? So there's the part also where Nathan, he's gotten upset with Lakeview, and he's going to see what other virtual environments have to offer. And so his mom takes him to this like used car salesman kind of guy. And there's this like running joke about IR and how it's, what is it like? Is that immersive reality or something? I'm not sure. Do you know?
There's AR.
Well, right. But so there's AR, which is augmented reality. But then this like sleazy salesman is trying to sell him on IR. Mm-hmm. Does anyone know what that?
I think it is immersive.
It like projects stuff on the room, basically.
Yeah.
It was kind of like low budget virtual reality inside of the virtual reality.
Yeah.
It reminded me of, I don't know if any of you tried it out, but the very first time I tried a VR rig, they'd taken like a video game and just put it was a 2-dimensional video game on a giant screen inside of the VR. So it was like, come play this game. And what it was just in the VR, you're in this giant room, and then the game is projected on a wall. And I remember being just stunningly disappointed. Just like if I wanted a giant screen, I would go play the same video game over there. But instead I have this like hot, sweaty like helmet on, and I see 4 walls and the video game on the final wall. Like, just very sad. And that was kind of the same moment that you could see that when they're trying to sell the budget virtual reality there for that, it was just kind of the same shtick, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I guess that's kind of the overall appeal of this show, is like taking this concept of virtual reality, which is so often portrayed in science fiction as just like mind-blowingly awesome, and then it has all the like same like frustrating things as like actual technology that we deal with every day.
Yeah. It's like a friend of mine who was talking about space travel, who said, like it's like, we're all like, everyone who goes up into space in the future is going to be like, wow, this is mind blowing and it's so cool and science fictional concepts are amazing. But like, you're not going to give a crap about that if you're the fry cook in the back of the spaceship.
One of the other cool things I thought about the sort of shopping for the virtual realities thing is when so Nathan has to or he agrees to sort of chaperone Nora's dad as he's going on a tour through what's it called? Lakeview. While he's going through a tour of Lakeview, because she wants him to go there because he's dying, and so she wants him to agree. But her dad, believes in heaven, and and his wife had died, and so he wants to actually die and be with his wife, and so she doesn't want to lose him, so she's trying to convince him to upload, and then so Nathan's showing him around, and then they have some kind of glitches happening, and that's actually where Toby's a wish of Minecraft comes in, because Nathan suddenly sort of starts glitching a little bit, and his body like turns into like this blocky Minecraft dude, and it's pretty funny. But I thought that was really cool. Like I love the idea of them just doing that, like, tour of it, and having to convince people, because like, yeah, I mean that's totally, totally there would be tons of people who wouldn't be convinced by it. So I mean, if anybody remembers way back in episode 19, again, to reference Robin Wasserman, that's when we talked about her book Frozen that Dave was mentioning earlier, and then we had our panel topic where we discussed this concept at length, and I won't bore you with my opinions again, but I do not believe that consciousness transfer really would preserve your identity and all that, but that said, I mean, if I was dying and it's like, this is a shot to maybe continue, I mean, I'll give it a shot. I wouldn't really have any confidence in it working, but, I'll give it a shot, so.
Yeah. Well, I want to get Abby back in here, but yeah. I mean, yeah, because there is this thing about like, well, it was making me think, right? Like, say you're young and healthy and the possibility to upload exists. And so you can live forever if you do that. Whereas if you don't do it, if you wait until like you're on your deathbed, maybe like something happens and you die in such a way that they can't upload you. So like, what choice would you make in that situation? Right. So Abby, what do you think about uploading? Would you do it?
Yeah, I would definitely do it. I mean, I want to live forever.
Say you're young and healthy. Would you upload like right away?
No, I think, you're right. The risks go up, like an anvil can fall on your head at any second.
But do you share any of John's concerns about that it wouldn't really, what he's saying is that he's afraid it wouldn't really be him. It would be just kind of like a copy of him, basically, but his subjective experience would come to an end.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a real fear and that's a real possibility. I would still take the risk because, better than full stop end.
Yeah. Yeah, if you're waiting until the end of line, then go ahead and give it a shot. But doing it beforehand is the big risk. Like you say, they need those cortical stacks like in Altered Carbon. Like that way, you can live your full life, and then if you die, then okay, well there you go, you're fine. It's automatic upload.
Well, and this thing with Nora's dad, where I see that like if this technology ever comes to exist, I see that being a real huge issue for lots of people. Like, if by who are religious and are like, well, if I'm going to live forever in the VR, then am I never going to go to like the religious heaven, right?
Right.
So I thought it was good that the show addressed that, because that definitely would be a huge issue, it seems to me.
Yeah.
I know. So Abby, it sounds like you're pretty positive about the show overall. Did you have anything that didn't really work for you as well?
No, honestly, I was having trouble not binging it. And I'm looking forward to season 2. I mean,
Yeah.
I honestly, this show is 100% like it hits all the right notes for me.
Huh. So could you say more about, like, do you tend to like a lot of shows that you watch, or was
No.
this like what sets this
That was
apart
so
from-
definitive. I love it.
Yeah.
Not at all. Yeah, I mean, like, for one thing, I thought this one did have a really well thought out world. Like, you could tell he thought about it for more than 5 seconds. The characters had such good interactions, and it was like a large cast of characters with enough of them that were likable that you're kind of rooting for, like Nora. So yeah, I liked them, and the dialogue was pretty witty. Like, I thought it was just, the writing in general tended to be clever and witty, and I like that.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think what are some shows that are similar to this that, recently. And so, like, years and years, Toby and John and I all talked about. And then there was this show called Maniac on Netflix that we covered. And then there's the show Space Force, which I haven't seen. I don't think it's that similar, but it is also Greg Daniels. And this show is, I think, 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, and Space Force was like 38%.
Oh, really?
So,
yeah,
I'm curious if anyone who's seen both of those, if they have any ideas why this one works better than Greg Daniels' other science fiction show that's on right now.
I mean, this is definitely much more interesting and well thought out than Space Force. I mean, Space Force is it's enjoyable, but it's not in the same league as this, I think. It's still funny because, like, Steve Carell's in it and he's funny, but yeah, I mean, it has it's just a completely different vibe too, because it's just like, maybe it's like a little bit too close to the real world, and the idiocy of the whole the way the Space Force thing was being handled. But yeah, it's but yeah, I mean, I think it's still enjoyable, and if you like this, you might enjoy it. But I'm a little surprised that there's a 50% difference between the ratings in this show and that one.
I think what is intriguing about Upload is that it really goes all in on the world building. And it really takes the science fiction world building pretty seriously, actually, because whenever you see that there's going to be a comedy based on a science fictional concept, I always get this hollow feeling in the pit of my stomach, because I know that I always suspect that they're not going to be like deep lovers of science fiction, and they're not going to take the concept seriously. They just play everything for laughs, right? And it's just like, here's the obvious joke, here's another obvious joke, here's something that's silly, and I think what makes Upload work really well is that the things around the stuff that we discuss that are silly and fun, and there's a lot of witty dialogue. But, like, despite all of the previews for the stuff that focuses on the humor, like, the core of it is really earnest. Like, it's a very earnest core, and not earnest as in like cheesy earnest, but earnest as in like, let's dig into all of these concepts as far as we can and really examine them. Right? Like, Dave talked about just when he gives the religious father the tour. They don't play that for laughs a ton, right? They're very there's a lot of
the father's views are treated with complete respect, which I thought was great. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm not particularly religious, but I was actually really pleased because they really took the time to get into the character's head. And represent him. And so I just think that there's a lot of just really good core, examining out all of the repercussions of the technology, that they can take the laughter. I mean, the sex suit episode is legitimately funny, but it's also kind of earnest because Ingrid really has been left. And even though he's died, he's in this quasi state where she can talk to him, she can sext him, but she can't be with him, right? And they're both kind of getting sexually frustrated, right? And it's it's played for laughs, but it's also like both characters are genuinely trying to kind of keep a connection going and failing. And it comes back by the end to be really important for them both. So I think the coreness of it is that it actually, even though it's a comedy, it takes all of its characters very seriously. And I think that's what makes it work for me.
One thing I was going to say about the how they treat the father's views respectfully, I feel like one of the ways that they really nailed that is that they put him and Nora together and they're having a conversation, and you can see that Nora is clearly very concerned about this because she doesn't share his views, and so but then he's presenting his case, and I feel like the show does a really good job of presenting that as like, okay, so Nora has this opinion, and but that's not what the show is saying. It's like you can just watch the show and take it however you want to, because this is what this character thinks and this is what this character thinks. It's not the show trying to tell you that, oh no, the dad is obviously wrong, and I thought that they did that pretty well.
Yeah, well, just when Toby was mentioning these world-building details, there's one other world-building detail I really liked that I wanted to mention. So when Nora goes, I think she goes to have dinner at her dad's place, he says, oh, Jamie Oliver just tweeted out this new recipe for a steak.
Right.
And he like plugs it into his 3D printer and like, prints out the steak. And that seems very, plausible to me. And then also there's this great moment where Nathan's I think she's his niece or something, like Nevaeh.
Yeah.
She's having dinner with Ingrid's awful rich family, and she finds a bone in her chicken, and she's like, "Oh, what is this?" And she's never encountered bones in her meat before because she's only eaten 3D printed meat. And they say, and Ingrid says, "Oh, not everybody can afford like non-printed meat." And I thought that those details were all was again, like Toby's saying, just great parts of the whole world that the show creates.
Yeah,
right.
100%. Well, it's all well thought through.
Yeah. I was going to say one thing that I don't want to compare too much to other shows that are not science fiction, but in terms of the sort of vibe of the show being so earnest, like we were saying, where it's like, it's a comedy, but there's so much like real emotion in it and like real stakes and everything that it's like it's only kind of a comedy. It's like got a very serious undertone, or maybe it's overtone. I mean, because it feels more like a drama than it does a comedy, honestly. I mean, if you look at the whole thing overall, but it reminded me a lot of the show Catastrophe, which is also on Amazon, and that one's much more of a traditional sort of a comedy setup, but it's just got it's got so much like emotion in it, and like you definitely it's definitely a show that will make you cry. I don't think that Upload's that kind of show, but in the way that they both really take all of the plot elements so seriously that you can't really properly call the show just comedy. I think like there's a parallel there. So like, I mean, and to the extent that I think if you liked Catastrophe, I mean, I think you'd probably like Upload.
Okay, yeah, I haven't seen Catastrophe, but I totally agree with you that the show is basically it's a really quite good comedy. It's a really quite good romantic, like office romance kind of thing, and it's a really quite good techno thriller. So it we pretty quickly get the idea that Nathan was murdered, and how that sort of mystery develops. So I thought was actually pretty well done. And there's different like red herrings and clues and stuff like that. I guess, and like I said, like the episode where I really started liking it was episode 5, the gray market episode, because like I said, I thought that maybe Nathan and Ingrid should have been a little bit more kind of grounded like Nora is. I actually heard Greg Daniels say that for all of Ingrid's scenes, they did like a grounded one and a kind of like more how would you say, broad humor one, and then they kind of like mixed and matched them in editing.
Interesting.
So I don't know, maybe they made the right decision. I mean, obviously they know more about it than I do, but I felt like maybe they could have gone more grounded. But I thought that the broad humor worked really well for all the peripheral characters, like the kid you mentioned who's frustrated that he's in a kid body when he's actually like his mind is like 19 years old or whatever. And
that was so good, like about I mean, because again, earnestness, right? Like parents who refuse to let go of their kids or let them grow up. I mean, oh man.
Oh, and also like him talking to, like having that phone call with his with his mom and his brothers in the background, and his brother just doesn't even want to talk to him because like I could totally see that because it's like, he's yeah, it's like it's awkward and complicated, and I thought that was handled really well.
Yeah, these are all like they're common in the upload trope, but it's like the show takes it and like takes it to its natural conclusion. It's like the self-aware kind of humor, which I really like.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, well, the part where there's like his best friend, like the kid's best friend, and it's Nora, right? Sort of gets on the phone with him, and he's like, we were like best friends when I was 12 or whatever, but now I'm like, 17 or whatever. I don't want to like still talk about, like be friends with the 12-year, like, yeah, it was like that was actually really kind of like that hit me.
Yeah.
But yeah, like all these peripheral characters, like I was saying, like Nora's awful, like boss from hell, Lucy.
Gosh, it's horrible.
The dog therapist. Like,
I love the dog therapist.
Yeah, that was I love that. He's eating ice cream and the dog is kind of licking its balls. And you're like, that's exactly what would happen.
And then like Luke, the kind of like douchebag friends who he meets in VR, like like all of them are like pretty like over the top, but like that works really well for me because they're all like really really funny. I guess Abby, are there any other characters you want to?
Yeah, one that I thought was just great was Fran, the investigative cousin.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that, I mean, too bad she died. Spoiler, but yeah, like they kind of just played that. Like she really is investigating. She's the epitome of like a. She reminds me of a lot of writers, honestly. Like she's just got that. Like I'm gonna solve a mystery. I'm gonna be the one that solves it. A lot of true crime aficionados, and so she goes investigates. But wouldn't you know it, she got a little too close to the truth, and she also dies in a self-driving car accident, which you saw coming from a mile away, but it's like, yeah, the way they did it was just so funny. I mean, you just know what's going to happen.
Yeah, though that character was fantastic. Yeah, so she's like she's his cousin or something, right?
Yeah.
And she's like actually a gym teacher or something, but she's decided to like investigate his death. And it's just really like has like a notepad and is like really like obnoxious and curt with everybody and going around, and yeah, it's so much fun to watch. But speaking of like getting too close to the truth, I assume everyone noticed the smoking man from X-Files.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not put that together, but now that you say it.
Right.
Oh yeah. So
I was just gonna say that was really well cast.
Just saying, as a '90s TV watching kid, it's Cancer Man, right? It's Cancer Man was the official title of the X-Files guy.
Yeah.
Got to represent.
I think this official title might be the cigarette smoking man.
Right.
I think Cancer Man might be a fan. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah.
But
Cancer Man's the fan thing. Yep.
But yeah, the cigarette smoking man as basically David Koch. Is it? David is one of them, right? Anyway, one of the Koch brothers.
Yeah, well, he has a name that sounds almost just like that, right?
Right. It's
David
Choke, I think. Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Very, very cleverly disguised, guys. Never didn't see through that one.
Well, it's funny. Actually, one of these interviews I watched with Greg Daniels, they asked him, like, did you have to get permission to use like the names of companies and stuff? And he's like, no, we didn't really worry about it, and Amazon didn't seem to care. So
really, because they were doing that all over the place. So, like, it's Panera Disney. They just put like a fast food chain with a big tech giant.
Well, wait, I have that line actually. I want to show you. This line just cracked me up so much. There's just a newscast on in the background, and the newscaster says, "Aggressive chain restaurant Panera Bread stock is soaring after buying Facebook earlier this year."
Yeah.
Because they're doing this stuff with trying to create new. So there's this. They're trying to create new like biological bodies and then be able to download the uploaded people back into the bodies. And so one of the companies is Oscar Mayer Intel.
Yeah, that was great. Although I have to say one of my other technological issues is when they do try to do that first clone that they're going to put the brain back in or the mind back into, and it's like, so what I didn't understand, why would they clone the guy as an old man? If you're going to clone the guy and put him back in his own body, wouldn't you clone him and like age him up to be like a young man? Like, did he want to be back in his old man body? Who wants that? It didn't make any sense.
He's
Maybe
very
it's all they have.
secure in who he is.
I
Don't
mean,
body shame
Greg
the
Daniels
guy.
just wanted to give Creed Bratton, a job. Because he's like, hey buddy, you were great on The Office. Like, here, you can be in my new show for 5 minutes.
Well, I mean, also like all the uploads are different. Like a lot of them are old, and that doesn't make any sense, right? You would think that they would all look like,
right?
Like Nathan. You know, like
and
virtual reality.
Yeah, and there's the one woman, what was it? It was Ingrid's like grandmother or something, right? Where she looks like an old vintage photo of herself. Like that made sense. Like, you could totally see somebody wanting to do that.
She said it was the only photo they had of her.
Yeah, that was weird. But
I mean, that was just for laughs. But I mean, like you would think that like realistically they would at least colorize her or something. You know?
No, I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool to keep it as black and white. Like, and I could see somebody totally wanting that on purpose.
Actually, that would have been better if she said that she wanted it that way. She's
yeah.
This is my favorite picture of myself, and I wanted it to look just like that or something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Before we get too far afield of talking about other characters, I feel like we should at least mention that Alicia, the other handler that Nora works with. I mean, she's also great, and no disrespect to her not having mentioned her before now. I mean, she's a secondary character, but she has a lot of laughs, and I think it does. It does a lot to round out the office environment to have Nora have that coworker that she talks to and everything, and has can discuss office politics about, and it's like it's actually, as the show goes on, it's like it's kind of become more clear that it's like it's kind of amazing that this virtual reality even works at all, given some of the the people that work there, because it's like, I mean, they're basically making minimum wage or something. I think they reference. I mean, they're certainly not making a lot of money, so it's like the people that work there, it's like, well, some of them are good, some of them are not so good. So I thought that was cool.
I don't think they're, I mean, I don't know. I don't think they're making minimum wage, but Ingrid says to Nora, like, oh, I support raising the minimum wage, just apropos of nothing. And I think that's just to show, like, how, like, rude Ingrid is. And, how she just assumes, that everyone's poor. She just looks at Nora and sees a poor person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So let's I guess get close into some of these final episodes. So, what did everyone think of the thriller plot? So actually, okay, so we're led to believe that Nathan's best friend stole his project from him and is going around trying to sell it. But it turns out that actually his friend Jamie is sort of dodging his calls because he hooked up with Ingrid and is embarrassed about it. And when Nathan this whole time has lost some of his memories in the upload process. And when he gets his memories back, he discovers that actually he kind of screwed over Jamie and sold their technology to Ingrid's dad behind Jamie's back. And so he's kind of been the bad guy in this friendship all along.
That was an awesome reveal.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then also we find out that Ingrid's dad, had Nathan killed, and Ingrid tried to save him by reprogramming the car. But then we're also kind of led to believe that Ingrid's dad isn't the main bad guy, but he's like an agent of some larger sinister force or sinister group of people or something. Is how I read it. But Abby, what did you think of when this show starts becoming more of like a thriller? How did that? Talk about how you responded to that.
Oh, I'm all for that. I kind of love murder mysteries, and I was like, yeah, who did kill him? Who did erase his memories? Why? So of course, that's the story question that kind of pulls me through the whole show. And when they start answering that, I'm like, oh, great, finally getting to it. I didn't even expect them to really address it all in season 1, and it turns out they didn't. They left quite a few loose ends. Like one, I think, big question left hanging is like, if Nathan did take a big payout, how come his mom didn't receive any of it? So yeah, where did that money go?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, so I think it kind of implies that Nathan, it may not be the bad guy we're seeing. Maybe somebody tampered with his memories. Maybe he didn't get them all restored. It's possible. And yeah, of course, like, somebody else is behind manipulating everything, and maybe it's the David Choke guy.
Actually, I hadn't thought about that. But Nathan's restored memories might be fake, and he's not actually
right.
Didn't actually do this bad thing. That possibility hadn't occurred to me.
Or I was just thinking that, I mean, it's possible that he did do the bad thing, but he doesn't actually have all of the memories back, and so to answer Abby's hypothetical question, it's like it could be that he set up some account to put the money in because he learned that people may be trying to kill him or something. Although he doesn't actually really behave like anyone's trying to kill him when we see him get in the accident. So maybe that doesn't really stand up to much scrutiny. But I was just thinking that it's like he could have put the money that he got from the sale in some secret account, and he just hadn't gotten around to being able to give his mom access before he died. But yeah, it's just like the way he acts at the beginning in the first episode before he dies. It's like he doesn't seem like a person who's worried about any of that. But
yeah.
Yeah, but so I thought that all the techno thriller kind of stuff was really well done, and the twists and everything, except for like one thing kind of like was a wrong note for me, which is where the guy came to Nora's apartment to try to kill her. I wasn't crazy about that. But then also, like, then she talks to her dad, and he's like, "Oh, actually, I have connections with the Lud underground, and I can like spirit you off to a safe house or something." And that seemed to me really. I mean, I know they had established that her dad was like not down with the VR and everything, but that seemed a little like far fetched to me. And I felt like that should have been established more. And I was getting a little nervous, like I was saying, Toby and John and I all talked about years and years, where it was this really good, it was this really good portrayal of kind of like ordinary people in this near future, kind of trying to live their lives as all this like messed up stuff starts happening involving technology and everything. And then like toward the end, it gets a little too far into the sort of thriller, like hackers and all this kind of stuff, which made it seem a little far fetched. And I'm a little concerned that might happen to this show in season 2, that it's going to get too like adventure-y, and we're going to lose what makes it appealing to me, which is the kind of like, the sort of ordinary people in this kind of like sort of crazy techno future. So I don't know, Toby, what do you think? Do you share any of those concerns?
Yeah, I mean, by the time you get to episode 10, it's all, not all, but it's really serious. And there's a lot of stuff going on. And the kind of charming takes a step back to that. But who knows? I mean, this season was such a slam dunk for me. I'm, absolutely willing to jump into season 2 and see where they take me. I mean, I'm going to give them a great deal of trust based on just how much fun I had with the first season.
Yeah, same for me. And I do have some of those same concerns that you're talking about, Dave. And as for the Lud Underground, like, I love the idea of that, but I agree that like it kind of comes in. It's kind of convenient the way it kind of drops in there and isn't well enough established for as important as a thing as it seems to be. But just the idea that there is such a thing, like that really worked for me. But yeah, that's also a really interesting parallel to Years and Years, and I agree. Like that's like it would be easy for this show to follow down that same path and get too far afield with those kind of thrillery elements. Going too far with it, getting it too far away from sort of the cool science fiction and comedy stuff that made us like it in the first place. But I mean, yeah, I'm happy enough with it that I very much am inclined to give it a lot of rope. So let's see where they take it.
Yeah. I guess I'll just mention a couple sort of random things. Just the Ludd movement, obviously, is a reference to Luddites, and which are people who are sort of hostile to new technology. And the movement is named after, it was an actual movement in England when like factories were getting going, and there were people who would like smash up factories, and they were inspired by this guy Ned Ludd, or like by the story of this guy Ned Ludd who had smashed up his factory or whatever. And my understanding is that Ned Ludd is not never actually existed, that this was just like a story that got going. And so this whole like character and this whole word and this whole thing that persists even into this TV show in 2020, was all just kind of like a rumor that got going, which I think is kind of interesting. So the Lakeview, a lot of it was shot at the Mohonk House, which is a kind of like a ski resort in New Paltz, New York, which is, I don't know, an hour or two north of New York City. And actually, one of the first times that John and I ever hung out was at a conference unfortunately, it was not at a resort. But,
right.
It was in New Paltz, New York. So it was kind of fun for me to see. I have been to Mohonk House. I've been there with my parents, but so it's kind of fun.
It wasn't at a resort, but the motel we stayed at was right next to a strip club. So, I mean, it was really, really classy.
Wow.
Well, yeah, this is maybe a little bit of a digression, but just to give you an idea of how awesome this motel was where we were staying at, I had to call 911 while we were there because a guy had pulled up in the parking lot and was shouting at his wife or girlfriend or something who was in one of the rooms threatening to shoot her. And then like a cop, so I call 911 and then a cop comes up and the guy he sort of like leans over the hood of his car and puts his hands behind his back because he had obviously been through this. This is not his first rodeo. So yeah. I don't know. Anyone have anything else about Upload that they've been wanting to talk about?
Oh, I guess I just thought that little code device he was given towards the end where he can alter the code, that's sort of Matrixy.
Oh yeah. Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, so I expect we might start seeing, you're right, that it might be the second season might be a lot more action oriented, more heroic, which I'll like. I think I'll eat that up. So we'll see.
Yeah, so just to explain, Nathan gets his hands on this little tool in the virtual environment, which allows him to touch objects and open up their code and then make changes. So yeah, that was kind of cool. Trying to see what other notes I have here. Okay, this is kind of random, but so there's a scene where the first time he urinates in virtual reality. He discovers that it's the code is such that you can't miss the urinal, and so no matter how far he gets from the urinal, the stream of urine finds its way into the urinal, and so that's kind of funny. But it did raise the question for me, why would urination be programmed into this at all? Is that something that
yeah, but they really brought that up. They were like, he was like, why would you even have farts? And he's like, why do they smell so good? Okay.
I mean, by the same extension, it's you don't really need to eat, if you're in the afterlife, but at least eating,
I feel you would want to eat.
Right, you get pleasure. You get pleasure out of food, and maybe they were worried about decoupling the sort of other end of the digestive process from the brain. I don't know. It's a kind of a stretch, but yeah, no, I mean, there's probably just something that we wouldn't need to do.
There is actually a moment where there's his neighbors and one of them has paid extra to be sick.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, to have a cold.
Yeah, he's like, can you bring me a tissue, please? Oh, thank you. Just so glad to be sick and being taken care of.
I mean, I guess the thing is, it's depending on how long any of these people may have been in the afterlife, I mean, you could kind of see wanting to do all kinds of stuff at a certain point, just because I remember this from my life and I want to experience that again, even if it's not quite as what you remember, or you just want to feel different things because once you've been around for a long time. Although none of the people in the show have been dead for that long.
I was going to say, this is the year 2033.
Yeah,
so.
it wouldn't have gotten to that point where they'd be like, oh, I miss all of these real things. let me experience them, even if they were terrible things. You know.
There's a whole little club over there that cosplay breaking a limb. I've got a cast on.
Yeah.
Well, I guess that was one of my things is like, why is this so much like a nursing home when it's virtual reality? And it could be anything. I mean, like you see like the kid has sort of programmed the AI bellhops to like fight him Street Fighter style.
Yeah. Right.
But you would think that it's virtual reality. You would think that they would have like all sorts of, crazy like skydiving.
Yeah, but it's like a corporation. It's like some soulless corporation that has no creativity. They've probably got 10 committees coming up with things, and they're all erasing good ideas. Yeah.
I think Abby's. Yeah, I think you're on it. Like that's the way you excuse it in the world building, which is just that this is made by a corporate committee.
Right.
Yeah. Did you work for a tech company, Abby? It sounds like maybe you did.
Maybe I did. Maybe I still do.
Okay. Okay. In that case, I won't delve any deeper into that.
Maybe all my friends do. Maybe every one of my social circles.
Don't throw salt on the wound, Dave.
But yeah, so I don't know. But so people think that, because I don't know, isn't Elon Musk has got this Neuralink thing, right? So I don't know. Yeah. What do people think about the prospect of any of this coming true in our lifetime?
I wish, but I don't think so. 2033 is extremely optimistic. When you said, I didn't even know that was the year it was taking place. I assumed it was like 2080 something.
Yeah. Yeah, 2033 does seem way too soon for this, but I don't know. Stuff happens at a quantum leap level sometimes, so who knows. But I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical that anything like this would ever happen in our lifetimes. But hey, if I'm, like I said, if I'm an old man and I'm on the way out, I'll give it a shot. But
Same.
until then, I'm staying in my meat sack.
Toby, what do you think? Because I feel like you follow new technology more than I do. Like, what do you think about how realistic does this seem to you?
I don't think we're getting past the the problem that Robin Wasserman was talking about, which is that the very act of kind of stripping those neurons out of the brain to move them to something else kind of destroys the physical brain for quite a while, as far as we can tell with our technology. But one of the things that's interesting about it is just that, I think that it's the latest in a chain of so many upload ideas in science fiction. I thought it was a really clever look at it. As for whether or not we will ever have that technology, like John, I always remain dubious because whenever we think it's just 10 years out, there's something that gets released that says, actually, everybody, it's more complicated than we think. And so I can't get past the problem we were talking about at the very beginning of the episode, which was the subjective experience versus making a copy of yourself problem, which is just really hard to get past. So even if there was something where I could upload my mind and go live virtually, I'm like super aware of the fact that my subjective experience would be dying after I did it, which is suboptimal.
Yeah. See, this is why we all need to just get downloaded into like Cymec bodies and get the whole brain and nervous system, pluck that out of my body, put it in the Cymec, let me, fill it up with all kind of fluids to keep it, living and all that. And then maybe we can keep that system, that organic system living forever if, we maintain it and everything. And then we have our nice robot body and we can have adventures, go wandering around the galaxy. And I mean, that sounds pretty good to me.
Which does lead to a way in which you might end up getting to this point, which is, all of our cells are constantly being, they're dying and being rebuilt, right? So like all the cells that make up your brain matter weren't cells that were there 5 years ago, because there's death, renewal, and birth even inside of all of your tissue. And so there's some theories that, like, the way to transfer consciousness would be to slowly move a little bit of your brain while still being connected to something, right? And then once you've incorporated that, you keep moving a little bit more over and a little bit more over and a little bit more over, just like your natural, life, death, birth of cells inside of your body. You just incorporate moving part of yourself to a mechanical, product slowly, so that it's like this slow transference over instead of this instant thing where you make a copy. It's less make a copy and more very slowly migrate into something else.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Toby, when you're talking about, there's been all these upload things in science fiction, are there any of those that stand out to you, like in comparison to this? Or like, is this the first time we've seen in-app purchases in virtual reality?
I think this is the first time we've seen in-app purchases in, like, virtual reality copies of yourself.
Yeah, I was trying to think of, I'm sure there must be something, but I wasn't really able to, there was this book, The Golden Age by John T. Wright that I read, where the guy, he loses his, he has this like great like VR package and he loses it. And then suddenly he's like, being attacked by pop-up ads. Like they're just everywhere because, he doesn't have his defenses anymore. That's the first thing that's coming to mind in comparison. But yeah, like, I mean, I heard Greg Daniels say that, that his, like one of his, I think kind of what inspired this is one of his kids was playing some game where you're like taking care of penguins in a igloo or something, and his kid says, "Hey, can I buy this thing for this TV for $1.99?" And he's like, "What is this?" And the kid's like, "This, what does it do?" He's like, "No, it's just like a TV for your penguin to watch in this game, And he's like, "You're paying like money for this, And but yeah, I mean, but so does everyone think that say this technology is possible and is invented in our lifetimes? Will it be this kind of like we're being nickeled and dimed kind of thing? Or do you think that there's any hope that it'll be a better experience than this show depicts?
Yeah, not a chance.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, all the major servers, like these consciousnesses are going to require huge amounts of data. I just think big tech very big companies own these data farms. In the future, that'll be the case. I mean, someone's going to have to guard it all. Someone's going to have to pay for the energy it uses. It'll be big companies.
Yeah, so I have sort of two minds about it. On the one hand, I think that the nickel and diming definitely would happen. And could potentially even be even worse. Like I could imagine like them having a thing where like, you can eat all you want at this little buffet, but then you actually have to pay a premium fee to not have your avatar sort of gain weight. Which, like given that they can make your avatar look whatever you want, it's like, it's stupid, of course, but it's like that is the sort of thing that it feels like they would take advantage of because they know you might want to like have your avatar look a certain way. And so there's that, but then on the other side, like Abby was saying, it's like somebody's gonna have to pay for all this data and storage and protection and everything. And so if there was a way that the companies that owned all of this technology could leverage the people that were inside, as opposed to like an upload where they're not allowed to work because of they don't want the whole workforce to nobody in the real world to have any chance of getting a job. If you could somehow utilize the people that are actually in the virtual reality to help offset the costs, then maybe it wouldn't have to be as nickel and diming. But I don't know what that looks like, though.
Well, it's kind of interesting is that, because like right now we know that we're going to die someday. And then this sort of technology seems to offer up the prospect like, no, you could live forever. But then it's like, well, wait, if you have to pay for it, then eventually your real world resources are going to run out. And then they're going to delete your account, and then you're going to. So it's like you would still be in the like afterlife, but you still know that you're going to die someday. It's just depends on how long your family, your descendants or whatever, whoever cares about you in the real world is willing to keep paying for it. So it just like it becomes like another life where death is a constant reality rather than escaping from it.
Yeah, like your heirs get a message that says like, oh, this account hasn't been accessed in 37 years. We're going to be deleting it if you don't take action before this
Oh
date,
no.
and then this heir that maybe didn't even ever meet you, only had ever heard about you vaguely, and it's like has to make a decision like, I'll get around to it. They keep putting it off, and then eventually it's like they realize like, oh shit, I meant to renew that thing so that great Uncle Dave could keep living on in virtual reality, but I forgot. And then
Well, that means that the old people are going to have to connect with the living people constantly. Like it'll be like this desperate, like I still love you, great grandniece. I love you so much.
Right.
This kind of though is making me flash back to like the essential idea around. Did you, the Day of the Dead? Like, it makes me think of Coco as we're saying this, right? Like, you're only remembered by, you can only stay in that kind of in-between space if you're remembered by people. So there's just like there are interesting resonances to things that we already believe and do that are fascinating. But I wanted to jump in and say, just for fun, the humor side of things, I don't know if anyone's ever seen these, but there's this group of YouTubers that pop up on Facebook all the time called Viva La Dirt League, which make fun of in-game video games, MMORPGs, and just the silly mechanics of that, but done with live action people playing them. And it's a lot of the same kind of exploring the logic of gaming, the logic of in-game actions, and just kind of parodying them. So if some of the humor of this show got you to laugh, I have these like similar vibe feelings around Viva La Dirt League, and if you get a chance, go check them out. They're really funny.
Cool.
All right, cool. I just remembered one of my notes here is that, so it's interesting that Nora we thought was the best actress in this, because I think she doesn't have a lot of acting experience. She's actually a musician primarily, and she actually was like touring and writing songs with Prince. So pretty serious musical talent, and then obviously really good actress as well. And then actually I wish I had written this down, but I was reading the Wikipedia entry for David Choke, what's his name, but the cigarette smoking guy, William B. Davis. And so actually one thing that was funny was that Greg Daniels said that when he imagined this character, he said like, oh, I want it to be like somebody like the cigarette smoking man, William B. Davis, and then they were like looking around what actors are in Vancouver that they could cast. And they're like, oh, actually he lives in Vancouver. And so they just cast him. But then also in his Wikipedia entry, it said he's like a big like environmental activist. And also he was like a champion water skier or something like that. I should check that. But, a lot of these people are have like interesting stuff if you look through their Wikipedia, in addition to just like being actors. All right, cool. So I think that's pretty much all I have to say about Upload. So why don't we start wrapping things up? So how about John? Any final thoughts on this whole experience of watching Upload?
Yeah, I mean, I would give it a too big enthusiastic thumbs up. I really dug it. I think if you're going to watch it, you might want to block out a couple of days, because you're going to probably want to binge the whole thing. Fortunately, there's only 10 episodes. And it'll be a lot easier if you get in now before the second season, because then by the time the second season comes out, there are going to be 20 episodes. So then you're like losing a whole week to binge in it. So you might as well binge the first 10 episodes now, get out of the way. And but I mean, it's a great show. And I think half-hour shows that are really good and entertaining as this are few and far between. And I don't know about you guys, but I always like to have some half-hour shows mixed into my rotation, so that we want to watch one more show but don't want to watch a whole hour show. You got your half-hour shows, they're gold. And anyway, this is one of the really good ones. So yeah, definitely watch it. And from a science fiction point of view, it's very satisfying as science fiction, which is not always the case on television. So although certainly more and more these days. But yeah, check it out.
All right, cool. Abby, final thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I've just got to agree with all of that. if you like Rick and Morty, I think this might appeal to you. I guess that's not a guarantee, but it has kind of, I think, a similar humor, but live action. And yeah, I mean, I really had trouble not binging it. It was great.
Toby, final thoughts.
This is a really fun show with some larger-than-life characters that take a turn towards being fully realized and warm, that you really end up rooting for. With, as we've said, some standout performances, particularly by Nora, the actress who plays Nora, whose name is escaping me. And it is surprisingly really well thought out science fiction as well. So it's just a pleasure on like a lot of different axes that was fun to watch.
Yeah, and actually the actress's name is Andy Allo, just for the record.
Yeah,
again,
fantastic.
She's terrific. And so yeah, I mean, and like I said, like I just thought it was like okay for the first couple episodes. So if you start watching it and you're like, this is just okay, I think it gets better and better as it goes. And like I said, by episode 5 or so, I was really, really into it, and it's really funny. I was like laughing out loud, especially as we got later into the season, just all the time. So if you want like some science fiction comedy, definitely check it out. Upload. And definitely looking forward to season 2. I'm a little apprehensive that it's going to get too like techno thrillery and it's going to seem like a different show, but I'm definitely, hoping I'm going to enjoy it as much as I enjoyed season 1. And we'll see what happens. But yes, why don't we wrap things up there? So we've been speaking with John Joseph Adams, Tobias S. Bickel, and Abby Goldsmith. So thanks everyone so much for joining us.
Always good to be here.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
And that was our panel. So big thanks again to John Joseph Adams, Tobias S. Bickel, and Abby Goldsmith for joining us on the show. And remember that Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is made possible thanks to support from listeners like you. So if you enjoy the show and want it to continue, please sign up to give us $1 or $2 per episode over at patreon.com/geeks. And if you'd rather make a one-time contribution, you can do that via check or PayPal over at geeksguideshow.com/crowdfunding. So big thanks again to everyone who's contributed. We really appreciate it. All right, so that was our show. So thanks everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time.
The Geek's Guide to the Galaxy is a production of Wired.com. For more information about the show, visit geeksguideshow.com. To learn more about your host, visit davidbarrkirtley.com. Music and voiceover produced by yours truly, Jack Kincaid. If you enjoyed this program, tell your friends. If you didn't enjoy it, tell no one. Thank you for listening.